Well, hello everyone. Sorry, I made a brand new button to go live, and I wanted to make sure I was in fact live. Welcome to, I think, week like 72 of this great Monjero experiment. The week was fine. I lost 1.2 pounds, which is a good solid week, and I sort of am starting to feel like the end is getting close. I can see it getting there. I suspect that I sort of, like I said, have a range, and I will hit the top of the range in 4 months, which is good news. And then we'll work on, losing the rest of it, slowly too. So it's going very well. I tossed out a bunch of clothes some more. I just had a bunch of clothes that are just too big. And so the t-shirts I'm just using for mowing and sleeping in and shoveling the yard and the driveway probably. And the pants are just going to go out entirely. But good week and still losing it. And still, I'm starting to see muscles pop, which is kind of exciting. Hello, welcome out there. Thanks for coming. So good week in general. And I was pretty excited. Like I said, I watch a lot of different people online and read a lot of different blogs. And we talked last week about a couple of things about how dieting, people are saying don't diet and other people are saying, yes, you should diet. And there was another person who brought up a study that says really when you're on GLP-1s, you don't have to diet, which I fully believe because you're potentially nauseous. Food doesn't look that appealing to you. I noticed, like I said, the whole... everything tastes very like what it is. I can taste every salt granule, and food that has chemicals in it, they taste very chemical-y. I don't know what that is. It's really wild, but that has come back too for me. And so really, you're right. I don't have to track my calories or diet or anything like that at all. It's just a matter for me of why I calorie track is I calorie track to make sure I get enough food, that I eat enough. I am trying for 1,200 calories a day. And on today, I took my shot like I normally did. This is going to be the 5th shot on the higher dose box. And I might not eat enough, particularly on shot day and then the next day after. But I make sure that I get the right kinds of calories. And so that's primarily what I do it. But I thought her point was kind of interesting. She goes, well, don't diet because, and I'm not saying diet like the sense, I'm talking about diet mostly in the sense that I've been talking about it, of eating high quality food, eating the right mixtures of protein and carbs and all those types of things, having a treat once in a while. And that's really what I'm going for. But I sat there and I watched your video talk about how you don't have, and you're right, you don't have to diet on GLP-1, but there's going to be a day that either maybe you're done with GLP-1 or it's no longer working for you. I don't know what happens, so she got herself into a situation where she's on maintenance. She's doing great, but she felt like the 5.0 milligrams wasn't enough and she went up to 7.5. Is that going to keep continuing? Is the maintenance phase of this look a lot like the weight loss phase where we keep going up and up and up? I don't really know. And again, it's going to be a big surprise to me too, whether I keep on this drug at some sort of a low dose or I try to titrate and quit entirely. Thanks for hearing I'm still losing weight. I was having diminishing returns, but that was because I was on a dose that was not working, and now I have a dose that is working. So the nausea came back. The sleeping really well came back too. I think I'm exhausted all the time. Like I said, I mentioned that my heart rate variability, this app seems to think I'm somewhere between exhausted or sick all the time. And that's pretty sure that's just the GLP-1, doing whatever it is it does. And the other weird side effect I have that not everyone has is it's almost like anything that I ever hurt in my entire life. So I killed both my ankles. They ache after I take my shot. I had some shoulder problems at the beginning of this year, and they started aching again too. It's the wildest thing. And then it just goes away after 2 hours. The ADHD stuff has tightened up again, and I'm back. So it's just a wild experience to go onto this drug and talk about it. But it's been really good. And I bought some flannel shirts because I am so cold all the time. And it is not even winter here. It is a good solid barely autumn so far, and I am chilly all the time, which is also wild for me because I'm the girl who doesn't get sick. And my brother can attest to the fact I went 30 miles from the Arctic Circle without a coat on because I never got cold. And now I get cold. So weird. And the other weird thing is my hair is really not behaving. I used to have hair that just behaved itself. So all I had to do was wash my hair and go poof, and then it dried and it came out perfectly every time. And now my hair just doesn't I got Harry Potter hair. It just won't behave no matter what I do with it anymore. So I don't know if that's the drug. Is that just me getting older? I don't know what it is. So there you go. That's my personal update, but still going well. And like I said, I can just taste the end of this so fast. In fact, I had another person come up to me and say, Jill, maybe you should stop. And I'm like, oh no, I still have a gut. And that's the thing, like I said, that concerns me the most. The gut fat is the most dangerous fat, and that's the one you really have to watch out for. So there you have it. What I thought I'd talk about today, and I hope that this would be kind of fun, was a little bit about the history of fad diets, because my friend and I were talking about this, that, we got caught up in these fad diets throughout all these decades. And now I think we are actually, everyone probably thinks that they're in the right time, but I feel like now we are getting an understanding of how metabolism works, digestion works, what it is we should be eating. And that probably comes to do with the fact that we have better tools. There's this concept in science, and I won't go into this too much, of what you would call black box science. So think about, you have a caterpillar, and it makes a chrysalis, and then it comes out a monarch butterfly. How do you study that you don't know what's going on inside that chrysalis? You can dissect it. It kills the caterpillar. And, so you can't really understand what's going on. So you do experiments, and that's how we do diet experiments. So like I said, I'm not going to go into it. We put food into people, and then we see what comes out of them, either one end or the other, but we try to figure out exactly what happens in the in-between. And we just have better tools now. And so we are getting more closely related to that idea of what actually is true and what isn't. But over the decades, there wasn't. And I kind of laughed with my friend. I said, we're going to talk about some of these fads here in just a minute. But we laughed because, the industry tells you to eat this, sugar. You should eat a lot of sugar because it's low fat. And you're like, cool. And you're like, oh gosh, we should have known better. We should have just known better. Our brains tell us that is not true. We can think. And so how do food fads happen in all of this? So some of it has to do with pop wisdom, or maybe someone wrote a book, and maybe that person who wrote the book knew what they were talking about or didn't know what they were talking about. There's industry marketing involved in there. There's our great desire to lose weight. I mean, like I said, I first was told I was overweight when I was 8 years old. And I've been trying to lose weight ever since then. And everybody has their 2 cents in that. People in school would tell you what to do. I remember my grandmother even, she would say, well, you can't have fruit, but you can have this. And she did the best she could with the knowledge we had at that time, but it wasn't always accurate. I will say that my grandmother's wisdom when it came to food was more accurate than what you believe, considering it was decades and decades ago, but still not exactly right. And it's our deep down hope that we lose weight, that we hope in fads, that we hope something is going to do this. I remember the very first fad I got caught up in was when I was in high school, and my friend lived down the street from me, and they had these caramel candy cubes, and you just ate them and you would lose weight miraculously. And so she ordered a bunch of them off of some website, and it wasn't even a website. It was like a magazine, I betcha. And so she ordered it out of a magazine. And so we tried it and we measured our weight, and of course it didn't do anything. It was ridiculous, that something that you got off of a magazine was going to cause you to lose weight. But, it's because you hope so much. You have so much hope that this is going to be the thing that actually makes it happen. So part of it is just the human element of hope or fear that you're just never going to lose the weight. the whole timeline in all of this, and like I said, some of it has to do with marketing and industry, and some of it just has to do with a scientist who got something wrong, or with a misunderstanding of how the body works. I was on Jenny Craig, Nutrisystem. I tried Slim Fast. I did the prepackaged meals. You name it, I did it. And I tried to lose weight every way I could. Jenny Craig was one of these sort of frozen entree meals, in that you basically cooked this meal and you threw in a couple vegetables and maybe some slices of apples, and then that was the meal, and they charged you a fortune for it. And my poor grandmother, who was just desperate for me to lose weight, paid for it. And I did. I lost some weight, and some of it was initial, because you always lose weight at the beginning of diets, because you stop eating as much salt. And as soon as you stop eating as much salt and eating less carbs, your body lets go of a lot of water weight it was holding on to. Oh, and then this idea of a shake for breakfast, that was a Slim Fast one. Shake for breakfast, a shake for lunch, and a sensible dinner. That's all you need to eat. And people work on these programs because we have decision fatigue. I just don't want to think about this anymore. Just tell me what it is I'm supposed to eat so I can lose weight, and I'll just do it. And I will just do whatever it is you tell me to do. And like I said, sometimes the science was wrong about it. Some of it, like I said, was because an industry was backing someone, or a real popular book came out. That is usually how it all happened. I mean, I think back, it's kind of funny, because I think, really? You're just going to drink chocolate shakes all the time, and that's going to be the good diet for you? So, we've seen them good and bad. There was a South Beach diet, the Zone diet, the Atkins, and then the Atkins revival. And those were primarily fads that said, and there's going to be a little bit of truth. So I don't want anyone don't come at me, bro, because, they had essence of truth in them, but there were some things that weren't true in them. So the idea in those diets were that carbs are the villain, and other foods were safe. Fats are not the enemy, and that essentially olive oil, nuts are the heroes of all of it. And it was a real shift, because right before that, there was this fad that was going on that was low carbs, I guess. Low carbs, low fat. And so we were all eating like no fat. Don't put butter or margarine. That's where margarine really hit its heyday, because you could get light fat margarine. Drink skim milk and have a low carb diet. And what happened out of that is there was what was called the Snackwell era. And this is the era that my friend and I were talking about how miserable we were, because they made these cookies, these Snackwell cookies, which were just like Oreo kinds of things. You should eat them all the time because they're fat free. And that means they're going to be okay for you. And so all of us just boxes and boxes of Snackwell cookies. And then we're like, well, we're not really losing weight. What's the deal? I'm having a low fat diet. So you can kind of see that this is our very first kind of trends, was this battle of good food versus bad food, or a good eater versus a bad eater. And, that's why these diets were doing it. And when they came out with all these diets, our blood labs didn't get better. Our weights didn't get better. We didn't lose weight. And, I remember once I walked into like one of these gas station stores, and the Halloween candy that was in there said fat free. Oh, I can eat this because it's fat free. Look at that. Sprees, Smart Tarts, all those things, fat free. And so then we would eat all these candies because they were fat free. And now we're all like, ugh, we were idiots, right? So then there was that part of it. Then comes like sort of the, think about like the paleo, right? We got to eat like our ancestors. Now, there's truth to be told in that as well, because, just like not having too many fats or not having too many carbs is a good idea. This one is like, we should eat what our ancestors ate, which makes some sense, because they were, eating what was around them. They had feast and famine, but that doesn't necessarily mean either that our ancestors, they lived to like 35 years old, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that our ancestors were eating that was entirely healthy either. And the other part of it is our ancestors were going out and hunting caribou and running through the fields and not sitting in offices watching television, and sitting 90% of the time. So it's you got to look at the whole picture of what our ancestors were doing. But like I said, the paleo came out of that. I think keto sort of evolved out of the paleo diets, but is a little bit more smart. And then you had all sorts of other plans. You started seeing the age of the celebrity people, like the Dr. Phil Shape Up Plan and the Oprah Slim Fast. And then later she bought Weight Watchers. Unfortunately, she bought Weight Watchers right before the GLP-1 era came out. And so now dieting wasn't just about like some book and you read this book. It was now like personalities. And you're going to join the Oprah plan, and it's entertainment and self-help, and we're going to get you through this all together, and you can buy my prepackaged plans, and you can buy this and you can buy that. And so you could kind of see all these various eras that people were going through in order to try to figure out how we can best lose weight. And some people, like I said, lost incredible amounts of weight in there. You know, it's a lot of work to get up and get snacks from the refrigerator. Yeah. Yeah, hunting elk is really hard, and so you burned a lot of calories doing that for sure. But then, we sort of saw in the 2010s, 2020s, then it started getting, kind of this like social media diets that now, and like I said, the good things and bad things with it both. Now we're not trying to just lose weight. We're trying to optimize our metabolism, reset our hormones, live longer. The Blue Zone books came out, like what is the best way to live the longest? And marketing really got smarter in that particular piece. So now when we look at it, we have like the keto diet. Nothing wrong with the keto diet. There are people who do the keto diet, which is the new face of the low carb diets. And you basically go through so much low carbs, you get into a ketogenic state where you are burning ketones. I've never been a ketone dieter, so I hope I'm getting that right. But that diet goes all the way back to the 1920s, where they started doing this kind of ketogenic diet for epilepsy. And then it kind of came back. But if you stopped eating all these carbs, your body would, like I said, go to ketosis. You would start burning fat for fuel instead of sugar for fuel. And people really love that because what you got was really early and dramatic weight loss. Some of it, like I said, was water weight. I believe for every gram of carbohydrates you eat, I don't know the exact measurement, but a certain portion of water stays in your cells. And so you are losing a lot of water weight when you go on ketogenic diets because you're not eating carbs and you lose that particular weight. But, sometimes you would get energy. You'd feel great. I mean, I remember people on keto diets, they felt great. And so, but then you kind of watched what people would do, because leave it to us that anything that you can do that's good, you can take it to an extreme. So now suddenly people are eating pounds of bacon for breakfast. They're putting bacon fat in their coffee. They're having fat bombs because, that's the idea, is it would help. And there's a lot of science that does support that keto does do short-term weight loss pretty good. It helps insulin sensitivity for some people. From how I understand it, fats are the only. So if you look at protein, carbs, and fats are the only ones that don't generate insulin in the body. And that, if you're having insulin problems, it can be helpful for a short term. But then people started realizing their cholesterols were skyrocketing because they're eating bacon I'd eat bacon all the time if you gave me a chance. They started getting fatigued. They started having nutritional deficiencies because there were certain things that they weren't eating that they probably needed to get in a little bit, because we do need some. And when I tried to go very high carb, low carb, high protein, which is the diet I'm primarily on right now. If I don't get enough carbs in my diet, I start feeling really terrible. Low energy, my brain stops working, and I just feel really terrible. And the other problem with it is that people with all these diets, as soon as you go back to eating normal foods, it really didn't teach you anything. It didn't teach you how to eat like a normal human being. which maybe you might say about the GLP-1s as well. But like Jenny Craig, you get these packaged meals. The slim fat diet, you get the drinks. The keto diets, you're eating these very specific things. The weight would come back because it really didn't teach any lessons about what it is I need to do. And so keto is really great if you're looking for a very short-term metabolic reset, but probably not when it comes from a lifelong lifestyle. That was kind of the gist behind it. But essentially where I'm at now is I am eating, now I'm up to 110 grams of protein a day. And then I'm trying to keep my carbs at, I think it was under 100 grams a day, which is not keto, but, low. I'm just watching how many carbs I eat because I know that I had diabetes and I don't think I have it anymore. But how I got diabetes, I think, was from eating too many carbs. But some carbs still pretty good for you. They all have their place. And so then when keto kind of started fading a bit, intermittent fasting came about. We are still in an era of intermittent fasting, and I do intermittent fasting. I do an 8-hour eating window and 16 hours of fasting every day. So right now I can't do fasting. I've tried it a couple of times, and because my blood sugar is so low because of the GLP-1, I start really fading fast when I do pure fasting. So I do the 16-hour eating window. And I think it makes some sense because the idea is that while you're not eating, then your body is going into its reserves, which is, like if you look at a camel and their humps are full of water, well, our fats are our energy storage unit, that kind of thing. And so it makes some sense. But intermittent fasting too is supposed to give your body a break from digestion so it can repair cells, it can balance out your insulin, and people have found good insulin balance with it. I mean, it helps them with it. And then there's something called autophagy, which is kind of when your body doesn't have enough to eat, it goes around and looks for cells that are in a semi-damaged situation and goes out and starts breaking those down. So it really has some benefits, like I said, when it comes to metabolic health, inflammation. They're talking about longevity. But of course, like I said before, if we can do one thing good, we take it to some extremes. And so then people were turning into gurus, I guess, and making promises, I think, that fasting can't do. That some people would fast and think that I can eat anything I want on these cheat days, and then I fast, and so the idea is it's going to be feast or famine, which kind of goes back to the whole ancestor thing, right? You kill a caribou, and you found a big bunker full of apples, and so it's feast time. But now it's winter and we're all starving to death, and so it's famine time. But the idea is that we started getting into these cheat days, and people started binging more outside of their fasting windows, and then they were losing any kind of benefits that they got when it came to fasting. Again, good truths inside of fasting, but people again took it too far. We also had gone through the era of plant-based eating only, that, meat wasn't going to be good for you, that we should eat plant-based foods. And I think that was more sparked from the environmental side of things, that wouldn't it be nice if we didn't eat meat? And also because, I'm kind of an animal person, but, the idea is wouldn't that be great if we could do it? And for animal welfare. But again, a lot of people, when they go on plant-based diets, can you live healthy? So my trainer, the one I work out with all the time, she is a vegetarian, and she eats very healthy, and she's very fit, and she has done it right. Now, one of the people who was working out with my trainer from my company also, she was also a vegetarian, and I said to her, I don't understand. How can you be a vegetarian and why do people get stuck when they're vegetarians with weight? Because it seems like it would be a very good way to lose weight. And she said, because they're not eating vegetables either. And I'm like, so they're finding things without meat in them, but not necessarily good for you. And so people, again, took a good concept, where you're supposed to eat whole grains, legumes, fruits, and vegetables, has lower rates of heart rate, lower rates of cancer, But again, then we started getting into these ultra processed vegan foods. We started making fake meats, fake cheeses, vegan junk food. And then, people are like, but it's plant-based, So the people who were me, back in the day were going, it's fat free, I can eat as much I want of it, are now going, but it's vegan, I can eat as much as we just get caught up into those things. And then, recently we had the clean eating thing, the idea of we're going to do a 30-day cleanse. We're going to get rid of all the garbage, the toxins. We're going to reboot our system. We're going to see what we're allergic to. I mean, that's where a lot of these cleanses came in, where doctors telling people you may have a food allergy. And I thought I had a food allergy. I might have mentioned that my hands were peeling, that I was having some kind of a skin. I was just allergic to everything in my skin. And I thought I had a skin allergy. I think now, because as soon as I started taking GLP-1, the skin allergies went away. And I think I was having an inflammation problem, not a food allergy. But you want to see, what is it I'm allergic to? Am I allergic to wheat? Am I allergic to dairy? You eliminate everything and you start introducing everything back in. And you do a detox and in order to see. But again, it's another one of those diets. And then Whole30 was the big one of that unfortunately left a lot of people that when they were done with their 30 days, they would just go back to where it was. Now we sort of live in this era of DNA and biohacking. I had my DNA done, so I could, and I learned a lot about myself. There's a website that you can run your flat file in your DNA, and it will tell you every clinical trial that was ever referenced in anything in your DNA. And I learned a lot about myself. I had terrible sleeping problems, and I learned that I don't make dopamine or serotonin, which is not surprising considering my background. Because on one side, serotonin is used, they believe that some effects with depression, and not making dopamine is seen as some kinds of effects of addiction. And I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And so I learned that, first of all, I'm a really addictive person and I got to watch out for that. But I also learned that I have a problem with saturated fats, and it was probably what was spiking my glucose worse. And as soon as I gave up saturated fats, my glucose started coming down. So, good things in the DNA and the biohacking world too. And obviously GLP-1s and these peptides are a big part of that. So, like I said, every era sort of has the wellness and algorithms and plans, and some of them are celebrity-based and some of them are a book. But the one big thing is to understand is not one single diet is going to fit all of us. I eat saturated fats, it spikes my sugar. And so now I back away from it, even though I love steak, beef, things with saturated fat. They're my favorite foods. But I back away from it because I know it hasn't been particularly good for me. Ultra-processed foods. You might call that a particular fad of what we have right now, but I think it's a good one of us getting away from it. A lot of what's going wrong in our lives has to do with these ultra-processed foods, which nutritionists kind of explained in sort of very basic terms. Most of the food we buy that is packaged foods is almost like eating food that is pre-digested for you. It just goes right into our body, right into our bloodstream. It doesn't really offer us a lot of benefit, and it immediately digests, spikes the heck out of our sugar, and eventually leads to metabolic problems. So I've gotten into this where I've gotten away from ultra-processed foods almost entirely. Like I said, I eat foods that primarily come from, it doesn't necessarily obviously it came from a farm somewhere, but it has to be something I recognize in human English words. I understand the words that the label says, right? And that's where I'm sticking to it. Even Trader Joe's has a lot of packaged foods where the stuff is just stuff. The meat is just meat, and you can read it and it looks like English food. I understand what it is. So we're all going to have to sort of look how we do things. But at the same time, we can say it's good for us to get a lot of protein, particularly if you're getting older. It is good for us to keep our carbs down to a low roar because that's what spikes our insulin, creates this roller coaster of high sugars and low sugars. Get more sleep, weight train. Again, cardio is great. Going for a walk is great, but you have to get the weight training in at least, like I said, 3 times 30 minutes a week. Those are, so I think we're starting to get out of the fad thing because we're understanding a little bit more what makes us tick. And I'm kind of, like I said, I'm going through that now. I'm figuring out what it is I'm going to look like when I eat. And we still get into, tracking calories, trying to control everything. And people talk about the diet culture. And I kind of like that a little bit, maybe because I'm a bit of a control freak. But not everyone does. And it brings up some very bad things in people who have had eating disorders. And so really in the end of it, not a single food, not a single nutrient, not a single thing is either going to make your diet work for you or break your diet either. You can have treats. You can enjoy food once in a while, but put it back to the level of treats. I said when I was a kid, we had pizza one time a year, and that was on Super Bowl Sunday. There were times where I could have pop, but those times were maybe like 3 times a year. We got to put treats back in their treats thing because now it's dessert for lunch, it's dessert for dinner, it's, going out to eat maybe 2-3 times a week. We got to put things back into its like natural spot. And like I said, me and my friend who were like, we were so dumb. Why did we follow for all these fads when we kind of know what it is we're supposed to be doing? And I think that's in the end, like I said, where it is I'm really trying to go with all of this. The idea is that I think in the end, and we're going to roll up because we're coming up on time here, is we are getting better at understanding this black box that is our bodies, what we put into it, what we get out of it, how do we start fixing these metabolism problems we're having. They're saying as it stands right now, maybe up to 80% of Americans have a metabolic problem. So if you think of half of America as being overweight and now 80% have a metabolic problem, that means they're headed for it too. So what can we do about it? What can we do instead of having these bad outcomes with these short-term diets that put us on this roller coaster of losing a bunch of weight and gaining it back and losing a bunch of weight and gaining it back? What can we do to have slow, sustainable weight loss, healthy living, less chronic disease, healthy aging? Right now, I'm sort of looking at my future. I want to age gracefully. And that's kind of my goal right at this moment is I am looking so that I can make the next X number of years that maybe I have in my life the best possible years that I can have, being healthy. I'm not doing this to look awesome in Kim Kardashian clothes. I don't even know if there are Kim Kardashian clothes. But the idea is that while so many of these diets were meant to help us, were meant to control every bite, meant to sell us these packaged things or sell us these programs. And you might even say now, well, Jill, you're buying a medication that probably costs like $1,200 a month from your insurance company, or the insurance company is paying for it. What makes you think that this isn't the latest fad to happen? Honestly, we make GLP-1s. I feel a little less worried about it because we do make this in our bodies. It's something that we produce, and for some reason, some people are deficient in it. Maybe we lose it over age, that we stop making it ourselves. I think we're going to find out, right? I think we're going to find out in the next couple of years exactly why this drug is doing so well and why we can do it. But when I picked up my next box of medication this week at the pharmacy, she says, well, do you have any questions for me about taking this? And I said, taking this? No. Getting off of this? Yes. And then she laughed and she goes, well, you're not to talk to your doctor about that. But that's the idea, is that we know how to get ourselves on GLP-1s, which maybe is the latest diet fad. We don't really know how to get ourselves off of it. And I think that there's going to be clinical trials, there's going to be experiments. Like I said, the pill's coming out probably in early spring next year. But the idea is that we're going to learn more and more, and this is going to get better and better. But underneath, all the slogans and the sciencey buzzwords, what's true? What have we been telling ourselves for decades is true? What have we learned? And I think that's up to us to really go and find out what works for my body. I work in clinical trials research. And the problem with medicine, just in general, is you have someone who has cancer and you give them this drug. And this drug is amazing because it cures cancer in 70% of the people who have this illness. Why doesn't it work in the other 30? We are all made up of DNA. We're all individual people. Every single one of us, from the moment we are conceived, are different people than even our parents are, than our siblings are. And we're going to have to figure out exactly how is it that we can make what works for us. Like I said, a lot of people who are losing weight eat a ton of beef. It kills my blood sugar. I can't. A lot of people like to fast. I can't do it because my blood sugar just is too low, or too low when I do it. So you're going to have to figure out what works for you. But I think the thing to look at is the next time you see the next fad, question it, think about it, take what's good from it, kind of extract the good out of it and leave it there. But also start thinking less about the 30-day cleanse or the 20-day fast. I don't think you can fast for 20 days, but instead think about small steps, a long consecutive weight loss that looks for our overall health, what's going to make us healthy now, in 10 years, in 20 years, in our old age. Think about all those things and start coming up with actually a long-term plan for eating instead of these fast-term plans. All right, I'm going to just cut it off there. I've spoken for a long time. Before I go, does anyone have any questions, comments? Are there any diets that you're looking at right now or fad diets that you fell for that you're kind of hitting yourself in the head with going, oh, why did I fall for that? I'll give it just a moment. All right. Well, if you do have fad diets that you thought were really great and actually worked really well, or fad diets that you think that were silly and why did you do it, like the Snackwell. The Snackwell diet is going to take everyone my age and just going to make us hit our heads. But put them in the chat channel and put them right down there. You can email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. From the comments, I always heard that the diets that the diet almost mattered less than the one that you'll stick to. Right. What's the best diet? The one you'll actually do. And I think that's a very wise thing, is that can you stick to it? Can you make it long term? And that's what I'm really extracting right now. What is my post GLP-1 diet going to look like? What can I actually stick with that will work for me? Because I don't want to go back. I know you don't want to go back either. So I appreciate y'all being there. Like I said, put your wise comments in the chat channel. Appreciate you listening. Appreciate you being there. And just have a really great week.